All right, Ken, why don't we go ahead and get this party started? Excited to have
Mhm.
everyone here today. We're going to be talking about getting ahead of product evolution. What is a product, how that's evolved, and the aspects of everything around that, and really thinking outside of the box when it comes to PIM and DAM. And we'll also dive into how some of those things kind of work together. So in terms of, if you don't know who we are, my name is Josh Van Dyk. I'm the Vice President of North American Sales at Censhare. I've been with Censhare for over 5 years. Censhare, if you don't know about it, is a platform that has PIM capabilities and DAM capabilities on a very enterprise level, but also extends out further with CMS and MRM and things of that nature. I'm delighted to have Ken Zordani from one of our partners, Avyre, joining us today. Ken, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about Avyre?
Yeah, pleasure to meet everyone virtually. Ken Zordani. We're a full service agency. We've been in the DAM space nearly or over 2 decades now, and in PIM within about 10 years. So we do everything from vendor selection to implementation, tons of migrations, and most importantly, strategy. When clients look to secure new technology or fix systems that need some help, we're kind of the media therapist, so to speak. So pleasure to meet everyone and look forward to speaking.
Well, it's great to have you here. And Ken provides a different level of perspective on the services side and has worked with a lot of different DAM and PIM providers outside of Censhare. What are we going to talk about today? So, what are we talk about? A product. What is a product? Because that has changed over time and the way organizations view that. Some of the complexity around products and the problems that organizations are facing. How do we solve for those problems? And then what are the options in terms of how do we move forward? And then we'll hopefully have some time at the end for a little bit of Q&A, answer some questions. So feel free to put those in the chat as we're going along. So Ken, in terms of products and that evolution of a product, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing out there in terms of what is a product.
Sure. Yeah. Trying to define a product, it varies greatly between verticals, right? It could be a bicycle that is the main product with thousands of different parts that make up that bicycle. It could be a movie with characters, with actors, actresses, and just the content that's in that movie. It could be a hotel that has a service or amenities for that as being sold as a product. So it's more of a service more than a tangible product, or even a magazine, the links and linking of all the content, the images and everything that composes that magazine, right? So if we think of a product, that could be a service or a tangible good that's sold, but also what makes up that product, I think, is where that evolution and where it starts to blur the lines of you have a lot of images and data technical sheets. You may have ingredients, ingredient data or compliance data, regulatory data that all needs to come together to bundle up to make that product. And as we're starting to engage our customers in different ways, whether it's on mobile, whether it's in user-generated content or digital signage boards, we need to be able to have a ecosystem that is very flexible to be able to kind of cascade our brand out, have the right data and the content that from that, if we think of how we may define a product, whether it's a bicycle or a magazine, right? There's numerous business challenges. How do we organize our data? What are the master source systems that should store that data? And then how is it massaged from a marketing perspective or through social media? All the relationships and variants that come off that content, where it's localizations or translations throughout our lines of business, whether it's B2B or B2C, both in-store, brick and mortar, or in a digital space, right? If someone wants to be on their phone and get onto a marketplace to order a new magazine or get on a Kindle to read a book, we need to be able to understand what the end goal is and the challenges that our teams face on a day-to-day. And really it's, what are those applications? What does our MarTech stack look like? And what's the user experience? If it takes your team or they're engaged in 4 to 5 different applications to accomplish a goal, is that the best strategy and go to market strategy or experience for our users day in, day out? right? We need to kind of understand what that evolution is, and I would say trim the fat, right?
Yeah. And, you talked a lot there about the different complexities, and we see that within the platform. You have a lot that's happening within a platform and a lot of different assets that make up that ecosystem. So you might have a team that's working on a blog post. They might be stealing some of that blog post and using it on social. They're using that to create articles or one pagers. They might have variants of those one pagers, and you're creating, language variants. You have, issues. You have, different distribution points, omni-channel, that you're distributing your products to. So you need a system that can really bring all of those things together into one place, and so that it's viewable and trackable, and you can collaborate on them. But with that process, if you don't have a system that can do it, we see a lot of problems. And so what are some of the problems that exist? One that stands out to me right away, it says spreadsheets with an exclamation point. It almost should say like spreadsheets with like 3 exclamation points.
Absolutely.
Because that is one of the main reasons why people come and say we need a product information management system, because they're so sick of working on spreadsheets. There's 1 or 2 people that actually know how the spreadsheet works, and they're like the source of truth for that information. And it isn't digital. It isn't collaborative among other people. Another one that's kind of stands out to me is that collaboration, no cross-team collaboration. We talk to teams all the time that have gone together and put these 2 things together, and they say, gosh, we live in each other's world all the time on the product side and the digital side. I wish the data lived together, the images and the videos along with that product data. So increasing that collaboration. And then, oftentimes one of the things that people don't know as much, but they know a little bit, is their data is horrible. We worked with Ken and I worked with a company recently, and they thought, yeah, we have some errors in our data. We're probably about, 30% of our products maybe have some sort of product data. It's a problem. So they did an audit, and they audited a select group of products, and they found out it's actually over 70% of products had some sort of data error in them when they were getting published to the website or to their catalog. And actually data has more problems than most people think. And so, Ken, you work with a ton of different projects. What are a couple of the problems, the areas that you see a lot of that kind of stand out to you here?
Yeah, and I think with anyone that's on the call today is there's probably dozens and dozens for your specific company. And these are, obviously just a few. The data is always a problem, or it's being manually inputted across systems and there's mistypes. But the other one is content doesn't scale. People and marketers and creatives are creating a lot of content. You're getting and paying a lot of money from agencies, but it's not modular in a way to where you can, create once and reuse often, to where you can start to really track the kind of return on effort from building that content. Like, how do we build smarter content and reuse it over and over again? The other one is a lot of companies spend a lot of money on tech, and they don't really get the user adoption, and they wonder why. How can you bring them together to get user feedback, to have the train the trainer approach? But it's always answering the question why. Your team needs to know why they should use this system to improve their day-to-day, and they can't just be force-fed an application saying, hey, go use this, it's brand new. Generally an emphasis on that, which is part of the overall digital strategy, right? Sure. And that kind of brings us into, what are our targets? What are we solving for? When we're bombarded with a lot of technology, tons of data everywhere, from PLMs and MDM systems, the PIMs, the DAMs, where should it live? If we don't have a core foundation of strategy of all our people brought together inside of a framework, when we make a decision to change a field inside of that, what's the downstream effects of that? Most companies don't realize the impact to their business when they make these changes. So we also have to think about tactical systems, point solutions, versus a strategic system such as a DAM and a PIM, where you can bolt on little things. We need to understand the value to those. Most often tactical systems can be ripped and replaced because they fill a pesky business need. But can we scale a larger, more agile system to accomplish that same task a lot quicker, right? So,
Yeah. And when I think of asset agility, I think of teams kind of coming together to enrich their assets with, again, product data, with product descriptions, with disclaimers, with images, videos, 3D files, things of that nature, then being able to quickly package those up and push them out to the channels that are important to them downstream, whether that's their website or syndicating out to other places. And then, you need to be able to scale that content, as you alluded to earlier, right? So we need to be able to quickly find content. We need to be able to reuse that content. We need to be able to see the context of where it's been used in the past so that we don't do the same thing again. And we need to be able to do that quickly and easily. And if we can do all these things, we have a great user experience, right, Ken?
correct. These three things are pulled forward into ultimately a user experience. Anyone can throw technology there, but if the user finds it too hard to be able to accomplish a task, they're not going to use it, which, our main goal is to make sure our employees or, customers have a really good experience when interacting with our brand, right? And if they don't, if that experience, you see here isn't delightful or valuable to them, they will move on. So employee retention, when not supported with right technology or process or culture, will eventually move on, and then you kind of lose that knowledge base. So user experience is extremely important when we're looking at a strategy.
Yeah, and not just for your staff, but also your distribution partners, any partners that you're working with. If you can make that experience better than other partners they might be partnered with, they're going to come to you more. And so let's talk a little bit, Ken, maybe around the life cycle of how this all comes together.
Yeah, so if we pull all this forward, we have our enterprise strategy, we have scalable and agile content, and we look at what the user experience would be inside of an enterprise technology that does DAM and PIM, such as Censhare, right? And if there are any questions, feel free to put those in the chat as we start to walk through. There's a lot here, got about 30 minutes. But when we look at what this process entails and how do we streamline our go-to-market, add visibility, get the right data, we want to, and we spend a lot of money on content and data. We want to create it once and reuse it often. That is the first part of the media lifecycle, right? We have all our creatives in Adobe Photoshop or InDesign or After Effects. Then we send it over to the next process, right? Which is our data complete? Is our assets touched up? Are they final? How do we collaborate with our stakeholders to make sure that this is in the right position to get it out to market, to start selling those products or putting it out to the movie theaters or publishing a magazine? We need to know what stage it's in. The next piece is the distribution and tracking. Where is it? If we need to send an update, how quickly can we do it without a lot of manual processes? But we need to get it there quickly and efficiently and be able to pull it back if we need to. If it's out of compliance, something needs to change, we need to know where it's at in its entirety. The next one, once it's out, we've created, it's all approved, it's the right data. We need to measure and optimize what that is. I always say fail fast. We know where our data is. We spend a lot of money on content. Understand what the ROE is, what's successful, what isn't, and then how do we pull that forward into the next campaign, into the next layout or ad that's going to be on television, so we can drive more brand integrity, engagement, and loyalty with our customers. Right? Comes full circle, and you just kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah. And so who's involved in this process? What's involved in this process? So it's not just the data and the content, but it's the people, it's the customers, it's the staff. So let's start at the center here. Of course, you've got your customer. Your customer may be purchasing things in a physical location, such as a store. They might have a physical catalog. But they also might have a digital experience as well. And sometimes those two things kind of mesh together, whether they're going online and purchasing there or through a third-party site. We need to make sure that experience is seamless, whether it's in-store or online together. And what goes into the information that they are seeing as the end customer? Well, of course, their product persona. What is the information that we know about this type of customer that we want to make sure we're feeding them the information that's most relevant to them. We may want to have some product documentation or rich media around it, spec sheets or images and videos. I know so many people that click out of Amazon because they've gone on to something, they found this product they think they like, and they're looking for a specific detail and they just can't find it, whether that's not enough visual information or enough contextual information around the specific data. The images and then the marketing media. So making sure you have that megaphone where you can get that message out and tracking how is that message doing? How is that tying back into our campaign? How did our campaign do? What are there specific print templates that we're using that we've used too many times or that got better results?
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure all that data is there. And then those product relationships. So seeing how everything is connected, one to many, many to one, and maybe suggesting other products. Now, that's a lot of information, but also it correlates back to the team. So like who's involved within your organization that needs to be responsible for this. And you can see the ecosystem that started to come and create that the system needs to be able to handle. So the platform needs to be able to work with your marketing people and your designers, your social media, your creatives, product managers, maybe the photographer that's external even, pulling them in and limiting their rights. That campaign planner that's starting to put together the strategy and how we're going to do it, the strategist who's looking at the results, and even down to that customer service person where someone calls in and are they getting the right information? Does that customer service person have the information at their hands that's actually accurate and up to date in the latest version? And so when we look at that, you can start to see all the data, the content, and the people that are involved in the platform needs to be able to support that. And when we're looking at, Ken, we kind of think about three core things here that support this. Ken, maybe you can tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, just one point. If there are if there are questions, please put them into the chat. And I would say when we get home and we have a big box of furniture and you have the directions on how to install it with an Allen wrench and there's 10,000 pieces, I think the information has to be very detailed or you're going to have a really bad experience, right? But there's a lot of people, as it's shown here, of how all that comes together to purchase and really put together a product at home. So end of the day, we need to have really that core system or ecosystem of the right tools and technology to be able to support the marketer, the designer, the social media team, the photographer, the agency that's giving us content, to create the relationships, to bring in product data, localization, translations. Even if we're starting to pull that forward, if we're a US-based company and we want to sell into the DACH region or EMEA or any of those, we need to be able to reach that customer on their language so they really understand our brand and what we're offering to them. But we need a system to support that. If you're working in 4 or 5, that's a really poor user experience to accomplish a few tasks. And the next piece is, really build a program. I would say this is more technology agnostic, but it's bringing those stakeholders, those subject matter experts, the content experts, to have a voice of what works, what doesn't, what is the current state of our program, but where do we want to take it? We need to have something tangible. Being in athletics for so long and playing college football, my coaches always said, if you have a plan and you have it written down, that's a dream. Make sure you have a tangible goal that you're trying to reach, but also know that every step in that process, you have to be flexible and fail fast. Know what works, what doesn't. But it always goes back to communication. And if we can do those 2 simple things, which is never really simple, it'll allow your company, your brand, to be able to drive other initiatives that weren't thought possible because of constraints of either technology, lack of communication. We didn't have our team speaking together of what changes need to happen. Hey, we can now add this service. If we're a hotel and we want to add a spa to our hotel, that's a product. But what is all the data that needs to feed into it? That drives more revenue and conversions and just opens up so much more opportunity with the right technology and team members.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today. So let's take a step back and think a little bit about what we learned. First off, everything's connected. You can start to see how you have data, you have content, you have people. You need to be able to understand those vast relationships that surround your product as you start to publish out products. And as you collaborate on those products, you can become quicker at getting to market because you have people that are involved and you can see how that all works. What are the problems that we're actually solving with your PIM and DAM system together, and who's affected? You can start to see we can maximize that collaboration. We can solve those problems in a unique way, and we can be a lot more efficient as an organization. We need to start looking at that bigger picture. Ken mentioned that enterprise versus a tactical strategy. So a tactical strategy is, I got to solve this pesky business problem. Let's go acquire this little thing to solve it. Versus an enterprise, strategy looks at, where do we want to be in 3 and 5 and 10 years? What types of departments are we going to bring into this platform? Who's going to be affected? What systems do we need to tie into the platform? And so really taking that North Star vision and creating an enterprise strategy, getting the right stakeholders involved internally to be able to do that, and then knowing the right questions to ask. And, not only knowing the right questions to ask, but why you're asking them. Because if you just had a list of questions that were like, here's the questions you'd ask, but you don't know why you're asking them, any answer a vendor gives you is going to be a sufficient answer, right? So what Ken and I actually have done is we've developed a list of the 14 must-ask questions when procuring a PIM DAM solution. Again, it's not just the questions. We have the question and then the why we're asking the question, the relevance, the meaning, what you should be looking for in that type of answer, and why it's important to your organization. If you'd like that, you can certainly email me the email listed on the slide, and we can send that over to you. Really handy document to be able to have. Ken, we've got a lot of information. What do we do with it now?
Yeah, I always say if you don't, you can't forecast or what your future is going to be unless you know your current state. I always say take an honest mental snapshot of where your business is today, what works and what doesn't, and talk to your stakeholders. It's amazing to speak with C-suite or VPs or director level, and then come down to the marketers and those that are on the ground just beating the streets and creating content. And what they perceive each other to do is generally very different. That's why I always say build a program, understand where you are today and where you want to go, so you can scale and create that path forward, right? Which is going to lead to be open for change. As we all uncovered in 2020, those companies that struggled to go digital because of work from home through the pandemic, we need to be able to be flexible when life hits us in the face or our consumers are unhappy with our changes. We need to know what works and what doesn't. So being open for change is always a good thing. The next piece is circle of trust. We've heard that from some movies in the past. Create a relationship of trusted industry advisors, experts that collaborate with a lot of different companies and different verticals, potentially even some of your competitors, as well as your technology vendors. Start to understand the landscape, where the vendors are going on their roadmap to craft your unique winning strategy, right? But know that, in 6 months, 9 months, a year, it could change. But that's where your program and your stakeholders are really there to help guide you, and you can throw ideas at them. But you need to have kind of that trusted advisor pod, so to speak, to help you through that process. You can't do it alone.
Yeah, and I like in that circle of trust, it's not just the external advisor, but it's the internal team. As you see, there's a lot of different departments kind of affected, a lot of different teams affected. So who are the stakeholders that you can build a circle of trust around to help drive an initiative forward?
And no one will really know your business quite like your internal team, but you also won't know the market as well as those that are external, right? Whether it's technology vendors or consultants like Avyre or others. It's always good to kind of bring someone in to get that agnostic opinion.
Fantastic. So we're going to open up for questions. Again, you can type your questions in the chat and we'll be able to see them. We did have a couple come in over the time. So one was around managing the local variants. So what does it look like to have localized content? How do you manage the variants? Ken, I'll let you go ahead and address that.
Yeah, that's always a great question, and oftentimes very complex scenario in terms of what that product may be, how you're relating that part to another one, whether it's an OEM part if you're from auto parts or something of that nature, or a bicycle, right? But then you start to add the localization piece of, can I sell this product in this region? Or how can I translate the data from English to Spanish or French Canadian to reach that consumer that's asking about it in a way that they want to consume it, for a technology to be able to support that? Often a very complex scenario, especially when you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders. Who owns the data? Censhare does this quite well with the global systems that global clients that we've seen. It can get pretty complex.
I got another one here around how does print tie into this? So if we're making a specification sheet around our product, or a one pager, or we have a catalog, how does print tie into the platform? And Ken, I'll let you go ahead and respond.
Yeah, within Censhare, whether clients have InDesign server and they're doing all their renderings, the InDesign interface within the web UI is very good with building out your templates once the template framework is there, to be able to accelerate that catalog, whether it's digital or print, pretty quickly, and then track all the relationships and variants, as well as some of the rights around the content being shared. You start to deal with high-end talent and, say, movie stars. They don't want their image next to another piece of content on the other page. Controlling some of those rights and relationships are also very key. Censhare does for many of the PIM systems, even DAM systems for that matter. Print is very, very complicated. Censhare does it quite well for a multitude of clients that we work with. Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the other thing we saw when it comes to print is a lot of automations, right? So we had an organization creating these spec sheets, and it used to take them an hour to drag in the product data, drag in the images, into the template, blah, blah, blah. There's only a couple people that knew how to do it because they had to have a strong knowledge of InDesign on the back end. And, now they can just drag in the product that has the shell of all of those different assets in terms of the images and the content, and it populated the data sheet. And in fact, you can actually take that automation one step further and not even have to drag it in and automate the whole process.
Yeah, you change the data value, it automatically populates it. It converts the PDF and sends it out to the website without a user having to manually move it. It's quite slick.
And we have time for one more question here. The rest of the questions we can get to, we can email you out the answers. But one more question is kind of an interesting one around, PIMs that say they can do DAM and DAMs that say they can do PIM. And how do you know who can do what around, all of this? As you say, there's a lot of content there. So I'll refer back, which is, because we're starting to run out of time. The 14 questions also lists out things that, hey, DAMs do this really well. That's kind of table stakes for a DAM, but a PIM will struggle with that, and vice versa. Things that are really PIM heavy, will do these things really well, but maybe struggle with some of these DAM features. So really having a platform that can do both of them on an enterprise level is pretty hard to find. And that's why that questionnaire and asking those questions is really important. So Ken, why don't we go ahead and wrap up? We have some contact details if you'd like to reach out to us, whether it's for that questionnaire or whether you'd like to just have a conversation of where you're at. We'd be happy to chat with you about that. Ken, any final thoughts?
No, I just appreciate everyone's time. Love to chat with all you Damsters if you're going out to Henry Stewart next week, and collaborate on how we can help improve your kind of ecosystem and technology.
That's right. Yeah, Censhare will have a booth at that event. I know Ken will be there. I will be there. So feel free to visit us at Henry Stewart, and thank you so much for attending today.